Dawn breaks over Vatican City as the Pope rises at 4:30 a.m., hours before most residents of Rome have stirred from sleep. The marble floors of his modest apartment in the Domus, Sancte Martae, gleam in the early light, filtering through heavy curtains. Though he chose this simpler residence over the opulent apostolic palace where his predecessors lived for centuries, even this humble accommodation surpasses what most would consider luxurious. People misunderstand the nature of the Pope's life, explains Cardinal Vincenzo Rossi, who has served 3 pontiffs as a close advisor. They see his calls for helping the poor and assume he lives ascetically. The reality is more complex. He lives surrounded by immeasurable wealth while maintaining personal simplicity. This creates a fascinating contradiction. The Pope's morning routine begins with prayer in his private chapel, kneeling before an altar adorned with gold leaf and precious stones. The crucifix before him dates to the 16th century, crafted by a master silversmith whose other works now reside in the world's finest museums. Outside this chapel, Swiss guards, in their distinctive Renaissance uniforms, stand at attention, a living link to traditions established 5 centuries ago. By 7 a.m., the Pope has already received his first briefing of the day. Unlike other world leaders who may scroll through digital tablets or smartphones, the Pope's information arrives in leather-bound folders embossed with the papal seal. These contain intelligence gathered by the Vatican's diplomatic network, one of the oldest and most sophisticated in existence, with nuncios stationed in 183 countries, providing insights often unavailable, even to major powers' intelligence agencies. The Vatican's information-gathering capabilities would astonish most people, notes Dr. Elena Ferrante, a historian specializing in Vatican affairs. While nations focus on military and economic intelligence, the Church gathers detailed reports on social conditions, religious tensions, and cultural shifts. This gives the Pope a unique global perspective few leaders possess. Breakfast arrives on china, bearing the papal coat of arms, served by members of the papal household, laypersons and religious who manage the practical aspects of the Pope's daily life. Though the meal itself might be modest, coffee, bread, and fruit, it is presented with the precision and ceremony befitting a head of state. Everything surrounding the Pope carries symbolic weight, explains Monsignor Paolo Bianchi, who oversees liturgical ceremonies. Even a simple coffee cup becomes significant because it touches the Holy Father's lips. Objects once used personally by popes become relics of a sort, carefully preserved and documented. By 8:30 a.m., the Pope enters his private library for the day's meetings. Here, the full weight of Vatican luxury becomes apparent. The walls are lined with ancient manuscripts whose value cannot be calculated. The desk at which he sits once belonged to Pope Leo XIII and is crafted from rare woods inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Behind him hangs a masterpiece by Caravaggio, one of dozens scattered throughout the Vatican's private apartments, never seen by the public. As morning sunlight illuminates the room's frescoed ceiling, the Pope receives his first visitor, a cardinal leading a Vatican financial committee. Their discussion will touch on assets worth billions, real estate holdings spread across Europe's most expensive cities, investment portfolios managed by the world's elite financial institutions, and art, collections that would make museum directors weep with envy. The Vatican Bank alone manages over $5.6 billion in assets, confirms financial analyst Marco Rossi. That's merely one facet of Vatican wealth when you consider the real estate, the art, the historical artifacts. We're talking about one of the greatest concentrations of wealth on earth, all technically under the Pope's authority. By midday, the Pope's schedule shifts to public duties. Walking through the apostolic Palace toward the weekly general audience, he passes through corridors lined with masterpieces. A single hallway contains artwork worth more than the annual GDP of several small nations. Museum curators worldwide can only dream of casually strolling past such treasures as part of their daily commute. The Vatican houses roughly 70,000 priceless artworks, with only about 1/3 on public display, explains Dr. Gabriella Conti, art historian and consultant to major museums. What visitors see in the Vatican museums represents merely the tip of an artistic iceberg. Countless masterpieces hang in private offices, residential quarters, and storage facilities. For the general audience, the Pope changes into formal vestments. His personal dresser presents options created by dedicated tailors who have served the papacy for generations. Though the designs appear simple, the traditional white cassock, red shoes, and pectoral cross, each item is crafted with extraordinary attention to detail, using materials of the highest quality. The Pope's primary cassock alone costs approximately €3,000, reveals Angelo Romani, whose family has created papal garments for over a century. We use the finest materials available. Everything must be perfect, as these garments represent the dignity of the papal office, not the individual man. The pectoral cross he selects today contains emeralds donated by a South American president in the 1950s. His ring, the fisherman's ring bearing the image of St. Peter, is gold, specially cast for his papacy. Though Pope Francis famously chose silver rather than gold for some personal items, the ceremonial objects he uses remain as luxurious as those used by his predecessors for centuries. After the audience concludes, the Pope returns to his residence for lunch. Unlike breakfast, this meal often includes guests, visiting bishops, diplomats, or theologians, invited to continue discussions over food. The Vatican's kitchens, overseen by professional chefs, prepare these meals with the precision of fine restaurants, though the Pope himself often requests simple fare. Vatican dining combines cultural diplomacy with nutritional needs, notes Sister Maria Rossi, who has studied papal household management. When hosting internationally visitors, the menu becomes a diplomatic tool. Chefs research cultural preferences and dietary customs, sourcing ingredients globally if necessary. Everything from plate arrangement to wine selection communicates messages beyond the meal itself. The Vatican's wine cellars remain legendary, housing vintages gifted by world leaders and reserved for special occasions. Some bottles date back decades, stored in climate controlled vaults beneath Renaissance buildings. The Pope rarely indulges personally, but these treasures remain at his disposal for important functions. After lunch comes a brief rest, a tradition maintained by popes for centuries, followed by private meetings and work sessions. The Pope's office features furnishings that blend function with extraordinary history. His chair, crafted in the 19th century, has seated multiple pontiffs. The pen set on his desk contains gold and precious stones, gifted by a European monarch. Even practical items carry historical significance. Everything surrounding the Pope exists in dual dimensions, observes Father Thomas Robinson, an American priest studying Vatican governance. An antique desk isn't merely valuable furniture. It represents institutional continuity. When the Pope signs a document with a gold pen gifted by a head of state, the act carries diplomatic weight beyond its religious significance. By late afternoon, the Pope often tours Vatican properties and projects, traveling in vehicles specially modified for his security and comfort. His primary car, a Mercedes, specially built with bulletproof features, contrasts sharply with the modest vehicles he publicly favors. Security personnel accompany him everywhere, using technology and protocols developed over decades to protect one of the world's most recognized figures. Papal security operates with extraordinary discretion, explains Giovanni Rossi, a former Vatican security official. The visual elements, Swiss guards in colorful uniforms, represent tradition. The actual protective measures employ cutting-edge technology. Invisible to observers, the Pope's movements activate security systems throughout Vatican City that cost millions to maintain. Evening in Vatican City transforms the ancient buildings with golden light as the Pope concludes his formal duties, while tourists depart from St. Peter's Square. The Pontiff enters spaces few outsiders will ever witness, the private gardens where popes have meditated for centuries. These gardens function as the Pope's personal refuge, explains Monsignor Roberto Belli, who oversees the Vatican grounds. While portions are open to guided tours, extensive areas remain exclusively for the Holy Father's use. Here, surrounded by Renaissance landscaping and classical statuary, he can reflect in complete privacy. The gardens feature botanical rarities gathered from global explorations over centuries. Plants brought by missionaries from remote regions, exotic species gifted by foreign dignitaries and specimens dating back to the 16th century. Fountains designed by master. Sculptors create peaceful atmospheres with water systems engineered during the Renaissance and maintained by specialists. As darkness falls, the Pope often spends time in the Vatican Library's restricted sections. Unlike the public reading rooms, these chambers contain manuscripts too valuable or controversial for general access. Here, documents dating to the early church share space, with correspondence from historical figures that would rewrite textbooks if released. The Vatican Secret Archives contain roughly 53 miles of shelving with documents spanning 12 centuries, reveals Dr. Marco Lombardi, medieval historian. While scholars can request access to certain collections, entire sections remain restricted. The Pope alone has unrestricted authority to examine anything, from ancient biblical codices worth millions to classify diplomatic communications from yesterday. Modern technology exists alongside these ancient treasures. Contrary to popular belief, the Vatican employs sophisticated digital systems, including a supercomputer managing astronomical data through the Vatican Observatory. The Pope's residence features state-of-the-art communications equipment, allowing secure conversations with church leaders worldwide. Few realize the Vatican operates one of Europe's most advanced cybersecurity systems, notes technology consultant Alessandra Ricci. The Pope's personal communications receive protection comparable to major governments. The contrast is remarkable. He might read a 500-year-old manuscript, then use encrypted digital channels to discuss its contents with scholars globally. Dinner typically arrives at 8 p.m., often taken alone or with close advisors. Despite access to world-class chefs, Pope Francis maintains simple eating habits. However, the setting reflects centuries of accumulated wealth. Silverware crafted during the Renaissance, crystal glassware gifted by European royalty, and table linens embroidered by cloistered nuns. Even when the Pope dines simply, the context remains extraordinary, observes Vatican food historian Claudio Moretti. The water glass beside his plate might be Murano crystal, created by master glassblowers. The simple wooden crucifix on his dining room wall might be carved by a canonized saint. Everyday objects in the papal apartments carry historical and monetary value most museums couldn't afford. After dinner, the Pope often reviews global Catholic news prepared by a dedicated media team. Unlike ordinary news summaries, these briefings include information from parish priests in remote regions, missionary reports from areas without regular media coverage, and analyses from Vatican diplomats interpreting events through Catholic theological perspectives. The Pope receives information no other world leader can access, explains Communications Director Father Paolo Rossi. While presidents rely on government intelligence agencies, the Pope has a network of over 400,000 priests worldwide, many embedded in communities ignored by mainstream coverage. When crisis erupts in a remote village, the Vatican often knows details before major news organizations. Before retiring, the Pope typically prays in his private chapel. Here, the full contrast of his position becomes apparent. Kneeling in personal humility, he's surrounded by objects of extraordinary value, reliquaries containing saints' remains, illuminated prayer books, created by medieval monks, and liturgical items incorporating precious metals and gemstones. This daily juxtaposition defines the papacy, reflects theologian Sister Elena Bianchi. A man who may have taken vows of poverty leads an institution of immense wealth. He promotes simplicity, while tradition requires him to use objects of great luxury. He speaks of serving the poor while living in a sovereign state filled with treasures. This creates a tension central to understanding the modern papacy. Few aspects of papal life reveal more about its hidden luxury than travel arrangements. When the Pope leaves Vatican City, complex systems activate, from advanced security teams to diplomatic protocols that exceed those granted to most heads of state. Papal flights operate under extraordinary privileges, explains Antonio Rossi, former director of Vatican Travel Logistics, while the Pope boards commercial aircraft modified. For his needs, these flights receive priority clearances that override normal air traffic. When he travels to certain regions, air defense systems activate along the entire route. The aircraft itself contains communication technology and security features costing millions. The Pope's accommodations abroad reflect similar considerations. While he may decline presidential palaces in favor of apostolic nunciatures, Vatican embassies, these diplomatic residences represent some of the most valuable real estate in their respective capitals. The Vatican's Paris Nunciature near the Eiffel Tower, for example, occupies property worth an estimated 150 million euros. Vatican diplomatic properties combine security requirements with historical significance, notes Ambassador Maria Conti, expert in diplomatic protocols. Many were acquired centuries ago in prime locations. The Rome-Tokyo Property Exchange of 1919 gave the Vatican one of the largest diplomatic compounds in Japan, situated on land that would be financially impossible to acquire today. During foreign visits, the Pope receives gifts that would overwhelm ordinary storage facilities. While he personally keeps very few, these items enter Vatican collections worth billions. A single state visit might yield dozens of presents, from gold-embroidered ceremonial garments to ancient artifacts, each cataloged and preserved by specialized curators. The Vatican Gift Repository contains treasures that would form the centerpiece of any museum worldwide, reveals Dr. Francesca Moretti, artifacts specialist. Gold ceremonial, items from African nations, jade from China, pre-Columbian artifacts from Latin America. Many given during papal visits. Their combined value is incalculable, particularly considering the cultural significance beyond monetary worth. Have you ever wondered what other hidden worlds of luxury and privilege exist beyond what mainstream media reveals? The extraordinary access we've provided into the Pope's life is just the beginning of our journey into the exclusive realms of global power and wealth. Join our community of discerning viewers who crave more than surface-level content. By subscribing to our channel, you'll receive priority access to our upcoming investigations into the private lives of world leaders, royal families, and influential figures whose daily realities remain concealed from public view. The Pope's medical care reveals another dimension of privilege. The Vatican maintains a sophisticated health facility staffed by leading specialists who remain on call exclusively for the papal household. These physicians have access to medical equipment and pharmaceuticals regardless of cost constraints that affect ordinary healthcare systems. No expense is spared for papal health, explains Dr. Giuseppe Romano, who has studied Vatican medical protocols. The Pope's medical team can summon specialists globally within hours. During travel, blood supplies matching his type accompany him. The medical suite at Gemelli Hospital in Rome contains equipment specifically reserved for papal use. The Vatican's wealth management reveals sophisticated financial operations belying its ancient appearance. Beyond the Vatican Bank, investment committees manage endowments, real estate holdings, and market portfolios that would impress Wall Street executives. These operations require meeting spaces where financial discussions occur. Amid Renaissance masterpieces, Vatican financial management combines modern expertise with unique long-term perspective, observes economist Paolo Bianchi. Unlike corporations focused on quarterly results, Vatican investment committees think in decades, even centuries. They maintain diverse holdings, from tech startups to forest land, managed with sophisticated strategies while adhering to Catholic ethical guidelines. As midnight approaches in the Apostolic Palace, the Pope concludes his day in quarters that epitomize the Vatican's dual nature. The personal items might be modest, simple, books, family photographs, religious mementos, but they rest on furniture crafted by master artisans for previous pontiffs. The walls surrounding his bed feature original artwork by Renaissance masters. Even his pajamas carry the papal insignia, custom made by Vatican tailors. This fundamental contrast defines everything about papal existence, reflects Cardinal Giovanni Rossi. The man may embrace humility while the office demands grandeur. He may prefer simplicity while tradition requires opulence. He represents both spiritual poverty and institutional wealth. Understanding the Pope's life means holding these contradictions simultaneously. A man of modest personal tastes who commands resources beyond imagination, who promotes charity while heading one of history's wealthiest institutions. As he sleeps, surrounded by centuries of accumulated treasures, the full paradox of the Pope's position continues through the night. Swiss guards maintain vigilant watch, electronic security systems monitor every approach, and the wealth of millennia forms a golden cocoon around the man who serves as both spiritual leader and sovereign ruler. The embodiment of faith's power expressed through material splendor. Few outsiders comprehend the Pope's role in global diplomacy, where his influence extends far beyond religious matters. The Secretariat of State, effectively the Vatican's foreign ministry, operates a diplomatic corps rivaling those of major powers, though with unique advantages. Vatican diplomacy works through channels unavailable to conventional governments, explains Dr. Antonio Rossi, international relations expert. When tensions arise between nations, the Pope can often communicate with both sides simultaneously, using church networks that function regardless of political conditions. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, for example, papal representatives maintained communications when official channels failed. This diplomatic machinery operates from facilities that blend religious significance with practical luxury. The offices where Vatican foreign policy develops feature 16th century frescoed ceilings above modern secure communications equipment, maps detailing global crisis points hang on walls adjacent to Renaissance masterpieces. The contrast between ancient settings and contemporary geopolitics defines the Vatican's unique position. The Pope's diplomatic corps receives training combining theological education with practical diplomacy, notes Ambassador Lucia Bianchi, who has worked with Vatican officials at the United Nations. Their living quarters and working conditions reflect their dual status as clergy and diplomats. A papal nuncio might celebrate Mass in the morning, then negotiate peace accords in the afternoon, all while living in a historic mansion filled with museum-quality art. The Pope's ceremonial duties reveal additional dimensions of institutional wealth. Major liturgical celebrations require vestments handcrafted by specialized tailors, often incorporating gold thread, precious stones, and historical elements dating back centuries. A single papal tiara from the Vatican collection contains diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and pearls with estimated values in the millions. Liturgical objects surrounding the Pope represent centuries of craftsmanship and devotion, explains Father Giovanni Ricci, Vatican liturgical historian. Consider the papal ferula, the ceremonial staff. Modern versions contain precious metals worth thousands, but their significance transcends material value. When Pope Francis carries a ferula during Easter celebrations, he connects to traditions established when Rome still had emperors. Even as Pope Francis has embraced a more humble approach than some predecessors, the ceremonial requirements of his office ensure continued connection to extraordinary luxury. During major celebrations like Christmas Mass or Easter services, he employs chalices, patens, and monstrances crafted by Renaissance masters and adorned with precious materials. These items, essentially functioning as religious tools, would command auction prices exceeding most museum acquisition budgets. The Pope's relationship with luxury reflects a fundamental Catholic theological concept, observes Sister Maria Conti, professor of theological aesthetics. Unlike some religious traditions that reject material beauty, Catholicism embraces sensory splendor as reflecting divine glory. The precious materials surrounding the Pope aren't viewed as mere wealth, but as appropriate expressions of reverence toward the divine. This explains how a man with simple personal tastes can function comfortably amid objective opulence. Perhaps most revealing about papal luxury is the contrast between public perception and a private reality. While global audiences see the Pope's public activities through carefully managed media coverage, daily life within Vatican walls includes privileges most people cannot comprehend, from access to information unavailable elsewhere to material comforts accumulated over millennia. The fundamental misunderstanding about papal wealth concerns its purpose, suggests Cardinal Roberto Bianchi. Critics see contradiction between Christian messages about poverty and Vatican riches. However, this perspective misses the institutional nature of this wealth. The Pope functions simultaneously as spiritual leader and head of a sovereign entity maintaining cultural treasures for humanity. The gold-adorned chalice he uses doesn't belong to him personally, but to the office he temporarily occupies. As darkness falls over Vatican City, lights illuminate St. Peter's Basilica, where architects like Michelangelo and Bernini created one of humanity's architectural masterpieces. Within its walls rest treasures acquired over 2 millennia, sculptures by masters, relics venerated by millions, and gold ornaments created by history's finest craftsmen. This building alone represents wealth that defies ordinary financial metrics, combining artistic, historical, and religious significance beyond conventional valuation. The Pope retires to sleep, knowing he serves as temporary custodian of this accumulated heritage. A man whose personal possessions might fill a small suitcase, yet who controls resources exceeding those of many nations. This paradox defines the papal experience. Extraordinary personal humility paired with institutional magnificence, spiritual devotion, expressed through material beauty and individual simplicity within a context of accumulated splendor. Understanding the Pope's relationship with luxury requires acknowledging this essential duality, concludes Vatican historian Dr. Elena Romano. He simultaneously embodies the fisherman from Galilee and the ruler of a sovereign state, the humble servant and the global leader, personal modesty and institutional grandeur. This tension has defined the papacy for centuries and continues today. A living contradiction that challenges simple categorization but reveals profound truths about how spiritual and material values coexist. Within one of history's most enduring institutions, unlock more hidden worlds of extraordinary luxury with our exclusive content. Subscribe now to access our full library of investigations into royal families, global leaders, and billionaire lifestyles. Join our community of knowledge seekers who demand truth behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and activate notifications today. Our next revelation awaits you.